Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to create a wall, maybe on the left side of the screen, somewhere here, and also something that the character can jump on. So let's go back to our platformer pack, go to tiles, and let's just find the brick wall image and drag that into our project. And again, I'm going to set pixels to units to 50, just so that it's consistent with all the other ones. And let's drag that into the scene. See that now we have this wall here. And again, I'm going to press down V and snap that object into position so it's lined up perfectly with the tile below it. Okay. And I'm going to add a component. I want a collider on this thing as well so that the character can interact with it. So I'm going to pick the box collider. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a green line outline on this object now, so that's our collider. If I turn that off, it's going to disappear. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's give that a try. Okay, my character can go and jump, and you notice that there is a slight problem here. If I am in mid-air and I'm sort of pressed against this wall and I hold down the left arrow key, you notice that the character is sort of just stuck on the wall. So what's causing that? Like that's a problem we want to fix. Well, let's go back to the player state machine. And notice that we're setting the velocity directly. Right, so we're saying, well, let's get a value from the horizontal axis and apply that directly onto the object. We're setting the velocity directly. And this is not always the way you want to move your character. There are a couple of different things you can do. One is like what we're doing here, we're setting the velocity directly. So when you set velocity directly, it's going to ignore all the other forces that's currently on this object, right? And another thing you can do is you can go to the action browser and Physics 2D and use add force, which adds a new force onto the object while everything else on the object is still working. So the object has its own velocity, and then you add another force to it, and the system is going to calculate what that force does to the player character. Previous videos that we've done, we've actually used add force before. So if you want a refresher on those, I'll add a link to them again on the page. But for now, I want to stick with set velocity, because one thing I like about setting velocity directly is you tend to have a bit more control over how the character will behave. And I think in this case, a 2D platformer game, we don't necessarily want a lot of sort of natural feeling physics. So we'll probably end up using a combination of both adding forces and setting velocities directly. Okay, so if I want to continue using set velocity, how do I remove this problem where the character will get stuck to a wall? And what's actually happening is when the character is right next to the wall and with the left arrow key pressed down, it's going to try to set velocity to go that way continuously, and because this object has its own friction, it's stopping the character from moving downwards, right? Because we're continuously applying this new velocity to it. It's trying to go into this thing while the friction on this object is stopping it from sliding down. So there's actually a very simple fix that we can do. Let's go to our object view, the project view. I'm going to reposition this guy here. Click on create. And what we want is a physics 2D material. And let's name this material wall for now. Alright, so I'm going to put it in the right folder. And what a physics material does is that it allows you to define the friction and the bounciness of an object. And if we go back to this brick wall, you can see that in the box collider there's a material field where you can put a physics material in there. So let's drag the wall material, the one we just created, into this field. So now this brick wall is going to have the wall material, if you click on it, which means it's going to have a friction of 0.4 and 0 bounciness. Right, so friction determines how something sort of stops movement, right? So if you have an object with a lot of friction, then when another object is running on top of it or alongside it, the speed or the velocity will slow down, right? It's going to slow down the object gradually. And bounciness determines how bouncy this material will be when something hits it, right? So it's easier if I just show you what they do. Right, so wall, let's make that a 0 so we don't have any friction on it. And if we just play this, now we don't have that problem anymore. Even though we're setting velocity to this direction, because there's no friction on the wall, the character does not get stuck. Now another thing I want to do quickly is I'm going to increase the amount of the jump from 5 to 7. As you can see, I'm still setting velocity directly here, and I think that's fine. When you set velocity, one thing that's quite immediate is that every interaction is going to be a bit snappier, right? So when you add force to an object, because all the other forces are acting on the object, the effect is not as immediate. But in any case, that's so I've increased the jump amount to 7 because I want to jump on top of this thing. And also I want to change the bounciness to 0.7. Right, so it's between 0 and 1. Let's set it to 0.7. And we just play this thing. Okay, first, I think that's high enough. And you can see that now there's a bit of bounciness that's happening when the character lands on this wall. One thing I forgot to do, I forgot to set this to the floor layer. Remember, our ground check checks for objects in the floor layer. So if I don't set this to the floor layer, then I can't jump when the character is on top of this. Okay, let's try that again. Great, so that works. And also I don't have that problem of getting stuck on the side of the wall, so that's good.